All right, part 3 of team racing, strategy and tactics. I'm going to give it a few minutes, see if anyone wants to come on up to the classroom. If not, no big deal, but I want to make sure that you guys all got on and I had the camera all set up. So, yeah. Like I said last time, while we're waiting, if you guys want to throw anything in the chat, you're more than welcome to, and we can try and address those questions or comments or any scenarios that you guys may find. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did yesterday night, where it's going to be, generally we're going to be doing a lot of this with just 2 boats to make things a little less confusing. Oh, of course, boat 1's still not working for us, so. Line them all up. All right. Still got a minute till this officially starts, so we'll get these guys a little further off the screen so we're not so crowded. And we'll label Mark 2. Little lighter group today, I think. So I'm going to give it maybe a minute or 2 more before I go crazy on this. Oh, sounds like someone's here. What's up?
Oh, wait.
You're the only one here.
What?
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of people on live, so say hi to everybody. You could have done live, yeah. You just would have had to you registered, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, so you could have watched the live. Send the link out. But it's okay. Now you're with me, Skylar. So you're going to be asked questions.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. So let's get into this now that we got a couple more people on. All right. Let me open up our little PowerPoint here for y'all. And we will go into presentation mode for you guys too. I don't remember how to do it. There we go. All right. So, like I said, this is going to be part 3 to marks 3 and 4, downwinds. So, a lot goes on downwinds in team racing. First part is once you round mark 2. Once you round mark 2, what do I need to do, right? The biggest thing that everyone teaches is the high-low or the low-high. To be honest, it doesn't really matter whether you decide to do the high-low or if you want to do the low-high. It's kind of preference on the team or preference on where the pressure is on the race course. So when you get around this course, you're going to have, in this scenario I've set up, you're in, let's say this is a 1-3. And you're going to want to look to pass back boat 2 at some point, but the black boat 2 versus the blue boat 2. So the blue boat 2 is going to round the mark, and for this scenario, let's say they're going to do the high low. So they're going to stay a little high, a little reachy around this mark. Boat 2 is probably going to follow them. Out to course left, course right, trying to keep the starboard advantage. And as this next blue boat comes around, they're going to shoot straight down towards mark 3. All right. So in this scenario, you have you know, these two boats going high, these two boats probably going low. Now, the reason you're wanting this is with boat 3 going straight down, they're taking the fastest line down to Mark 3. Let's turn the PowerPoint off for the moment, just so you guys can see this board a little bit better. So, then I'll kind of bring it back just slightly, because I did a little bit of that as you guys were still in the PowerPoint mode. So, as you see, boat 2 blue and boat 2 black are now going towards course right. Boat 3, the blue boat here, the second person in line, is going to go straight down to Mark 3. This boat likely going to follow that, right? So, straight lines. Hey guys. Hi. On time, as always. All right, so as you turn down to Mark 3, you're now probably past this guy on your head, which means you've kind of created the pass back by doing this high-low situation, right? Now, obviously, boat 2 is going to have starboard tack advantage coming back at the bottom of this course here. So, boat 2 may have to do some slowing at some point, but for the most part, if this is all same pressure, same everything, we're all looking at this boat taking the fastest line and this boat staying ahead of boat 2, which, if this boat does a bad job covering, is going to create a pretty easy pass back into a 1-2, right? So if you add a third boat into this mix, let's bring this down a little, just a little bit, not too much. So you have these next boats in line, they're about to round Mark 2. And I said in this PowerPoint, which you guys are going to see now again in a second, is basically you're looking to create a wall. All right? So once this boat gets to Mark 2, your teammate here, this boat is probably going to look for either a jibe to just extend out. This boat's probably going to jibe to stay on his hip. These boats are still course right. This boat's going to come down and now look to do the exact same thing that this boat did to get a straight line towards the mark. So as you can see on the screen now, I've got the PowerPoint. Hopefully you guys can see it at home. It's not black like it is on our TV here. But this now becomes the boat going straight down towards Mark 3. You want the boat behind, essentially, to have the fastest course to Mark 3, right? Now, when you've built this wall, so we're going to erase all of these lines here so it doesn't get too confusing. Your course will look like this. So you have your blue boat here, your blue boat here, and your blue boat here, right? The reason why you want to create this wall is because now you have help on either side, right? So if this boat starts to lose out to this boat, let's say they decide to go high here. This boat's probably trying to come up high here to cover. Standard scenario, this boat's trying to stay high to cover. If this boat somehow starts to lose someone, has to jibe out, boat 2 can come over to help, right? They're on starboard jibe. They're likely on port jibe, heading straight down to the mark, right? So as this boat comes down, these boats are going out here. This boat will probably jibe back with him. This gives 2 blue an opportunity to bump boat 3. They're very likely going to come up to almost a reach and just attack boat 3, right? They're leeward and starboard. their starboard and windward. I said that was poor. That was wrong. But leeward boat is going to have rights here. You want to come up at them aggressively so that they have no chance to get a piece of this boat here, right? If you wait too long for this help call, and this boat takes overlap here, and this boat comes over to give you a bump, this boat's leeward, they can't go above, they can't force this boat high because of proper course down the mark, right? You've created that overlap from behind. So you can't force him up like this, right? But if he has this overlap and you have a starboard boat coming at you, this boat needs room to keep clear of this boat. So this boat can now force this boat high. So that's a big mistake that I think a lot of people make, where this help call comes a little bit too late and it forces, this bump forces this to happen, right? And now if there is contact between boat 2 and boat 3, for whatever reason, or this boat avoids and hails a protest, this boat can be absolved from this protest, right? Because this boat on your team is not giving them room to keep clear of a starboard tack boat or a leeward boat, right? So it's really important to understand when you need to call for that help. But this wall will help with that. So let's say this guy's a little further back and he started to gain a little bit on you and you ask boat 2 for help. They can jibe over, just give them a small little hit. It doesn't need to be big. Bring this further down. Small little hit here, just make them go up to almost a reach scenario here. And now this boat's going to have some clean air for long enough where this boat can basically just do quick and then right back down and jibe back over. Right? Same concept happens over here on course left if you need it, right? Generally, another way to go about this is as you give the bump, you want to bump and replace. What do I mean by bump and replace? I mean, this boat, if they come over and give a bump and this boat comes straight down, you are no longer covering this boat on course right. That's a bad thing. Why is that a bad thing? Because coming back to Mark 3, this guy is going to have starboard advantage. And they're going to be the inside boat. This is a very powerful position in team racing, right? Being able to be inside of every single one of these boats and be on starboard because this boat's coming back on port. This boat is likely going to have to jibe back to port at some point. And this boat may be able to stay on starboard, but their issue is going to be what? They're now the windward boat as this boat comes back towards the mark. So this boat has a lot of power here. So by bump and replace, I simply mean as boat 2 comes over to give you a bump, boat 4 needs to be the new starboard boat. So if you can bump, boat 4 can jibe and get across you. Boat 2 has more of a handle on boat 3 here. Boat 4 is now coming over to pair up with this boat here, right? This is important because they can come back on starboard here, but if you've now replaced boat 2, you can now jibe and cover basically this boat, right? You're on their breeze, you're on their nose, and as you approach the mark, we're going to ignore these boats for a second. As you approach this mark, before you get into the, how big is the team race zone? You can answer. How many is it? 3 or 2? 2. 2 boats. So this is 2 boat lengths. 2. Wow, let's 2BF, right? So as you're about to approach the mark, all you got to do is head up a little bit, break that overlap, and enter the zone without inside overlap here, which now means this guy doesn't have any rights to mark from here. It's important, right? Because now you're in control of this race as these guys get down here. This boat has inside overlap and lured rights on boat 3. If this boat tries to get inside of you here, you can now bump boat 3 and let boat 2 around, right? This boat, if they try to shove it in here, you can just jibe and close the door, right? And obviously, if you think there's going to be a collision and you're this boat, avoid the collision, hail protest, and this boat is likely going to be red flagged for ignoring the marking rule, 18. So, this is why creating a wall is a very good way to control your race. Everyone here has a responsibility, and everyone here is going to be doing their job the right way. As you come into Mark 3 here, this boat is not in an advantage position, but because this is now a 2 boat length zone, one of my coaches used to tell me the Eminem song, 2 trailer park girls go around the outside, right? So if you're outside the zone, they can't touch you, really, right? I mean, you could be a starboard tack boat and come at you and make you jibe, but that's getting you out of the play, right? So a lot of the times, this boat coming from course left is basically, you have no chance of being the inside boat at Mark 3. No chance. But there's so much chaos generally coming into Mark 3 that if you just round the outside of this zone and work your way up, you're going to be untouched. If you go around the outside, you have all the way to Mark 4 to either work your way past one of these boats that got bumped. This boat, we talked about breaking the overlap before you enter the zone so that this boat has nowhere to go. This boat is taking a very wide turn, so it doesn't make sense for this boat here to attack that boat there. If they attack them, they're leaving a 2-on-1 over here. And this guy's late, so he's not going to have any room as well. If this boat's sailing fast the whole way around, this guy's not going to touch him. That's an easy pass back on the way around to Mark 3, right? So let's talk about this breaking overlap situation, because I find this to be a fun game of cat and mouse, right? Talked about it a little bit last night, about all of us chess, not checkers. Everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's got the same goal. Everyone's trying to get into a play 1. Everyone's trying to get into a winning combination. There's only so many ways you can create passbacks. There's only so many ways you can create situations that benefit your team, right? And you know what's going to happen. If you've been team racing long enough, you know that if you break overlap, if you're this windward boat, and you know this boat's going to come up to hit you, right? Let's say this has been overlapped for a while. So this boat does have luffing rights. And this boat is trying to get someone through. Maybe looks more like this. Further up, further down, right? Boat 2 here, let's use pink because that seems to be the most easy color. You got these guys trying to get him past him. So this boat is going to look to bump, right? This boat is going to look to get boat 3 past. And you know that. You know that's going to be the case. So there's this fun game we like to play downwind, where when you jibe as a lured boat, if this boat breaks overlap, they turn up. There's nothing. This overlap is broken, and then they're going to head right back down to the mark. This overlap is reestablished, but it's reestablished with this boat not having luffing rights. So if I'm boat 2, what am I going to do in that scenario? How do I reestablish my overlap? Well, there's 2 different ways you can reestablish overlap on a downwind, and that would be either sailing 2 boat lengths away. So 1, 2. So if you sailed out to here and then came back into them, you now have luffing rights. But we sailors know that's going to be hard to do. The easiest way to reestablish your overlap is this. I'm going to jibe, and then I'm going to jibe again. Now I've reestablished that overlap. And now I have luffing rights, right? So every single time this boat turns up, breaks overlap, comes back down, this boat is just going to go main over, and then re-engage, right? So if I'm the windward boat in this scenario, crew is looking at this boat to leeward. And every single time they reset, I know that this boat now has luffing rights on me. And I need to be proactive that as soon as I see a tiller start to move up, I'm trying to break that overlap immediately to force them back down to the course, right? I do not want, which I see all too often, the late reaction where both pairs are looking back over here, skipper and crew by pairs. Both people are looking over here. This boat does 2 quick jibes, and now they're here before you even realize they're coming at you to lock you up. And you have to do, basically, the minute they get here on you, you are getting passed back. They can take you all the way up to here. This boat's going to sail right by. And then all they're going to do is they're going to come back down. And you're going to end up in this scenario, where now the black boats are both clear ahead as they're entering the zone. And they've now passed you back, right? So you want to make sure that both eyes are there. But this is the game that we like to play on the downwinds. So if you've ever watched team racing and you're like, why are they jibing so much? Why are they heading up so much? That is why. People are trying to reestablish that overlap and gain the luffing rights on you to do a little bit of a pass back bump move. But if you have the wall set up, if he gets bumped, he can bump and slow things down, right? It's important. What did we talk about golden rule last night? Did anyone here watch last night's? No, that's fine. So we talked about the golden rule in team racing. Do unto others as they do to you. So if you see an opponent attacking your sailor, your teammate, like this, and you are in position to do the same thing, you should be looking to do the same thing. Right? Because in this situation, now nobody's getting by. That's obviously in this specific situation. This boat's clear ahead, so you don't have to worry about them. They're just going to sail down to the mark. But these two are kind of in a standstill, and what's likely going to happen is one of these boats is going to eventually break the overlap, and both of these boats are now all heading back downwind. And then there may be another jibe, reestablish the overlap, and hit them again. So that's kind of what I talk about in terms of playing that cat and mouse game. Who's going to win it? And it's really on who's going to be paying the most attention, right? It's all about attention. It's all about boat handling. If you have bad boat handling, it's going to be really difficult to do the downwinds, right? So working on boat handling all the time. Now, let's talk about how to slow downwind. I'm sharing the screen for you guys so you can take some notes. Hopefully it comes up for you guys too. But how to slow going downwind. We're going to take Mark 1 and 2 out of here. And we're going to take a couple sets of boats downwind out of here. So we talked about covered zones upwind yesterday, right? So your covered zones in medium air is about here. Your covered zones in heavy air is a little further back. So they need to be here. And then in light air, it's just, as long as you're over top of them, you're covering them. On downwinds, I see this, which, if you're going downwind in an FJ, you want to make sure that you're actually covering the boat here, right? Wind is coming from the top of the board. Their wind shadow, your wind shadow, is here, right? So you're not really affecting their main if you're in this position. You are affecting their main if you're in this position. So what I like to say is if they're on starboard tack, you want to be slightly course right of them. That's how you're going to cover a boat downwind if they're going dead downwind. If you're on port tack, you're going to be slightly course left of them, right? Because now you're covering, giving them bad breeze all on their head here. If they're having trouble winging their jib, you're probably covering them. If they're not having trouble winging their jib, probably not covering them, right? Now, this is where it gets interesting. We talked about coming from Mark 2, and if you're in a position where you need to be double teaming somebody, your best positions, especially when you're on reach, is having one boat pretty much here on them, basically mast to mast almost, and you're going to want to have one boat here, just slightly course right of them. This is going to create your wind shadow and force them to be slow, right? What I see too often in the double team scenarios is boat 3, this boat to windward here, is here, and boat 2 is here. And now, if the wind's coming from here, this guy has actually a decent lane, right? But if you shift forward and further course right, you're now actually giving them bad air and slowing them down, okay? Now, if you're just by yourself, another way to slow, talked about the upwinds yesterday, was a tacking battle. Just start tacking with them if they're trying to cover you. Same concept can apply with the downwind in terms of jibes, right? So if I'm slow and I can't seem to make them go any slower just by trying to cover them, they're just somehow making sure they're out of my wind shadow. What you can do is just jibe. They're gonna jibe. You're gonna jibe. They're gonna jibe. And that's just gonna force them to do a lot of maneuvers. And that's gonna be slow, right? Fastest way, without everyone else around, is just gonna be a straight line to the mark. So if you need to slow something down, or if you need to condense a race, you're just gonna wanna get into a bit of a boat handling battle with them, force them to just do a lot of maneuvers, and that should condense and slow down the race. But it's really important that, especially when they're reaching up, that you're forward on them, just like you would be on an upwind. But on the downwinds, you want to make sure that you're actually on the breeze, right? So that is kind of some slowing and what I talk about with the wall all the time. The wall is actually a really beneficial thing for everybody in a team race. You can set it up, you're going to be making things happen a lot faster, right? And then again, communication, talking about when you're losing somebody. If you've lost somebody, you got to let your teammates know. If you end up spinning, you got to let your teammates know. Now let's get to the fun part, mark traps. So I'll throw this up on the screen for you guys. Kind of little talk about how mark traps work at Mark 3 and Mark 4. If you want to give you a minute to take some notes on that before, because this is going to need the full board for you guys. So I'm also going to move these marks up while you guys are reading that. Move them up a little bit, make life a little easier to read. Give you the 2 boat length zone. See, my circles are getting better every single day. All right, mark traps. The fun part of sailing. Mark 3 mark traps are an umpire's favorite thing to watch happen. No, they're not, because they can get very confusing and there's a lot going on. So let's talk about this. You're setting a Mark 3 mark trap. Kind of got into this a little bit already, but let's reset it a little bit. You got your guy coming from course left. You got your guy coming from course right. You want to mark trap him. He's clear behind you. So you've rounded your marks, you've gone downwind, he's followed you the whole way down, he hasn't been able to cover you. You're approaching, you're clearly beating that boat, they're not going to have room. They're already probably deciding what they're going to do. But you're just going to enter the zone, you're going to slow down. How do you slow down going downwind? Sheet in your main, left your jib, do some S turns, right? Big S turns, not little S turns. Little S turns are not going to slow you down very much. It's a couple exaggerated tiller movements back and forth, and that'll give you nice slow down material, and then you can kind of dump your main and just sit just outside this circle here. You want to have a little forward flow. This guy's probably going to follow you and just be slow, right? If they don't follow you, if they just decide to take this high road in, you're just going to make sure that you get your boat moving again, and you're going to force them wide of the mark. If this boat decides to do this, he's now made your job very easy, right? If he decided to just go outside of you and just fall kind of right into your mark trap, which does happen. Someone can't slow their boat down fast enough. They don't realize until it's too late. They're not paying attention to you. They're paying attention to something else that's going around them. There's a lot going on in team racing, right? So they're going to go high here, and they've just made boat 2's job significantly easier because we just talked about this. What is he going to do? He's going to go around the outside, right? Just stick his bow down, stay around the edge of the circle. Boat 2 is going to tell boat this boat 2, black, and this boat 3, you have no room. This boat is going to have nothing to do but jibe, and you're just basically going to create chaos right here. You're just going to force them both wide, let boat 3 sail around. They can come into the zone at this point because you clearly have these 2 boats handled. Once this boat gets almost around the mark, you can kind of force your way, bear away, jibe, and now both of these boats are now behind you. Right? A little easier said than done. It's a little more difficult. In that scenario, it was really easy, right? Let's talk about how you would try to avoid that, right? Now, if this boat's smart, they're going to do the same thing, right? They're going to be like, okay, there's no chance of me getting an inside overlap here. I can't jibe here and then get around them and inside before they get to the zone. Just not going to happen, right? So what this boat's going to do is probably do unto others they do to you. They're going to slow down. This boat's going to slow down, and they're just going to kind of park it behind you and just force you around the mark, right? Because if this boat comes in, this boat has inside overlap, you want to trap so that this boat can get through. You don't really have a choice, because if you go after this guy and he wants to jibe, he's now on starboard and has marker on boat 3, which is going to force him to go wide here. And boat 2 is just going to follow you around the mark because they have marker on everybody. So what can happen here even is now the black team has created a pass back themselves, because boat 2 is going to be slow. Boat 3 can follow blue boat 2 around the mark. This boat, when they jibe back, is now at the mercy of this black boat here, right? He's going to come at him, maybe force him to jibe again. By that time, these guys are past the mark, and now you have a 2-on-1 going into mark 4. That's how you would break that up. Forcing this boat, staying slow. Don't try to do this. Don't try to dive inside. Don't try and get outside of them here, because then they're just going to head you up if they need to, and they still can get to boat 2. They're not going to be able to do much. Boat 3, your responsibility over here is just to make sure that you're wide enough where this guy has to jibe out of the way. He can't tag you. He can't force you to jibe. He can't force you to do anything. You're able to clearly cross him, and that pass back is successful, right? Boom. And then if this guy tries to say no mark room there to boat 3, doesn't matter, because boat 2 has mark room. They can jibe back and round this mark, right? So boat 3 diving inside here is a big no-no, big X. Don't do that. It's going to cause damage to boats, and you're going to be in the wrong every single time, right? That is your classic Mark 3 mark trap. And I want to make sure that everyone's aware that your setup is everything in a Mark 3 mark trap. If you don't have a good setup, you're not going to be able to make a Mark 3 mark trap work. You can't slow your boat down enough, and if you enter in a wrong part of the zone, you are also going to be SOL in terms of making sure that you, so let's say you enter from the top here, right? You enter from the top here, you don't give yourself much runway to slow your boat down. So you're just going to carry momentum as these guys come back. You're just going to carry momentum and probably not be able to trap this boat here. You're going to have too much forward momentum. When you go to jibe to close the door, the only thing that you can do is shoot up, right? And when you shoot up, does anyone know what happens when you tack in the zone? You lose your rights. So if you shoot up head-to-wind in the zone, you're tacking. You've now lost all of your rights. So you have now put yourself in a position where this boat technically can come in and round this mark. And you have no right to close the door. So it's important that you set up your mark trap in this general vicinity of Mark 3 and Mark 4. And make sure that if you're the boat coming from course left, you give yourself an out to get around the outside of this zone. So that way, these boats can't come out and attack you. For example, if you have a third boat into this, and they've done this right, where he's slowed down enough, you got this boat coming down the middle, these two boats here, let's say black boat fouled at the top and is spinning and they're just not in it, right? So as these boats approach, he's now mark trapping, he's going around the outside, he's coming in around the mark, you force him to jibe, he has to choose what he's going to do. Again, if he has not made the mistake and not slowed down enough, he's going to have to force high here. So now you have two boats going high of you here, and now you've been able to get two of your boats around that mark and one single mark trap. It doesn't happen often enough, but if you set up your mark trap right, that is a possibility of happening. You can go for a 2-for-1 there. All right, questions on Mark 3 mark traps? You guys have any questions on that? Nope. Any questions from the peanut gallery online on Mark 3 mark traps? No? Awesome. I know this is probably overloading to the brain for those that are first-time team racers, but practice makes perfect. And like we said last night, work on your boat handling. Team racing is hard if you don't have good boat handling. Take the third boat out of the picture here again. And actually, let's use different numbers because it'll make my life easier. So I'm going to keep saying black and blue boats. 4 and 5, 2 and 3. All right. 4 rounded first, 2 rounded second, 5 rounded third, and 3 rounded fourth. Now, as you approach Mark 4, let's get these angles right. Get these boat lengths right. This is your Mark 4 over here. Lots of ways to go about this, right? So, one of the ways is, first of all, making sure that this boat does not get this inside overlap on you. So one of the first things that I like to do when I round Mark 3 is just come up. Sail upwind a little bit. That's going to do 2 things for you. First of all, if this guy decides to sail up with you, this guy may be able to go low here. Could be a bad idea, but it could be an opportunity. If he's only focused on you and he sails upwind with you, this boat can almost just reach straight to Mark 4 and your path backs up. Seen it happen. Does happen. But if boat 2 is smart, they may come upwind with you slightly, but back to our golden rule, right? Do unto others, they do to you. This boat is going to make sure that this boat does not get that situation where they can sail right through. They're probably going to try to make a pass back here to help with this, right? So if you go high and this guy stays here, boat 5 is not going to want to put himself in this position. Why would they not want to put themselves in that position? Because let's take this all the way to Mark 4. This does not give an opportunity for boat 4 to make a pass back at Mark 4, right? Because if he says no room, he can also say no room. And guess what? This right here is going to turn into a pinwheel. And while that might be okay, because you could do what here? I think you could do here. Yeah, pass back. You could do a pass back, but 3 is going to have a clean rounding, probably be ahead of boat 5 by the time you finish that pass back, right? So not ideal. So don't do that if you're boat 5. Don't force yourself into a situation where you're giving boat 2 an opportunity, because his job is to get you, boat 5, in front by the time you round mark 4. So he's going to sail up a little bit just to make sure that this boat cannot get the inside overlap. These boats are probably going to follow because do unto others, right? He wants to kind of sail up so that he can't get the inside overlap. And if he decides to shoot down, well, great. Now you have him pinned. And then this guy's going to come down here. And as you enter the zone, clear ahead, inside boat to mark 4. This boat has no room. You can just put your bow down, go nice and slow. This guy is going to sail upwind. He can't turn up to defend without hitting boat 4. So boat 5 can sail up and over if they would like to. That opportunity presents itself to you. And boat 4 can give them all the room in the world if they want to. They don't have to round in a seaman-like rounded way as they round this mark. They can just kind of round as they need to. Don't take too much. Obviously, don't sail them. You can't sail them out of the zone here, but you can take a little more room than you need to. So feel free to take that room and let that boat inside of you. Now that's not always going to happen very well. So here's your other option. You've now turned up. You guys are playing up high here, going into mark 4. And you're on a reach, right? This boat's going to stay as you come in. You can even jibe here. Because jibing in the zone does not lose your rights. Tacking in the zone does. Your starboard boat, they have to avoid you. And boat 5 can just come in behind you. And as they come in behind you, you can just jibe right back. Let boat 5 round ahead of you. And your job is now done. You've now passed that boat going into mark 4. Those are your mark 3 and mark 4 mark traps. If you put yourself in a position to get this inside lane, if you're boat 4, that's great. But if you do this too early, what do you guys here think boat 2 can do here for the zone? Yes. There's a leeward boat. You just sail to windward of them. What do they have? They have bluffing rights. Yep, they can just, boop, just like that. Shoot ahead to wind. Boat 3 comes through. And now you have a 2-on-1 going into mark 4. Boat 5 is going to have to slow. But in this scenario, you're now probably not going to be able to make a pass back happen here. Right? I mean, you can take all the room you want. You can come down and sail. If boat 2 wants to shoot down low, it's the same concept as we just saw in mark 3, right? If boat 2 shoots low, boat 5 is probably going to make sure they cover him. Boat 3 can just kind of slow down, make sure boat 4 doesn't get there. And even if this is a pin here, boat 3 is now ahead of boat 4, and they can make something happen on the next leg, right? So it's really important to understand your boat placement and when you can shoot up and when you can't, right? So if this boat gets too far out in front, it doesn't really realize it until it's too late, and you can kind of shoot high here without them being able to touch you going head to wind. You can just sail right over the top of them almost, right? sail high, they're going to have to bear away. Going head to wind, you're going to lose some speed. You're ragging your sails. At that point, it can be a rolling scenario where you're just putting your bow down and just trying to get over top of them to get to Mark 4. And that's how we then set up the 4. And then you can probably just make this pass back happen on the next leg. Because if you've made this happen and these marks are close enough, there's a chance you probably don't have mark room here, but you should be able to just roll them and have a good rounding. And then boat 4 is gonna just follow in behind here. And if this boat tries to mark trap him, he's just gonna come back and make sure boat 3 doesn't go anywhere. So those are your mark traps. Let's see. We're gonna go to key concepts now. So let's bring this course back down real quick and go over these key concepts real quick. Rewind. And where are my marks? R2. So, as you round these marks, let's do this. Because this is a problem. So key concepts, downwind's a lot of action. You want starboard tack advantage. So if you're leading the race, you can either choose to take that starboard tack advantage, or if you feel like you have the best boat handling on the team and you want to be the one to slow things down, right? Some people have a speed guy on their team and they just want that person to go fast, right? Let's assume that's the person in boat 4. In this scenario, this is when you'd have a good opportunity to go low high instead of high low, right? So boat 5 can just shoot dead downwind for a minute, and boat 4 is going to shoot high here on a reach. As this boat crosses, you should probably look to jibe just to get clear of them, and now you've started your wall, right? And these guys have to make a decision on who they want to go after, right? Are they going to try and go after boat 4, or are they going to try and go after boat 5? And that's a communication thing. So if you're one of these boats, you guys have to communicate which boat you're taking. Because this boat, if they just go one-on-one, and these guys just go one-on-one, it's probably going to end up in the same scenario as you just saw it too, where he comes across and comes in. He comes straight down to the mark. He follows him into the course. He follows him into the course. This is a pretty easy, we're just going to round the way we rounded Mark 2, right? But you never want to leave starboard advantage on a downwind. You want to make sure you're far enough forward on the downwind if you are covering. And you want to make sure you're far enough over them to make sure you're actually covering their breeze, right? This is their gap. So if you're here, you're not really covering their main, you're really only covering their jib, you want to make sure you're a little further over. Because now you have your main here and your jib here, and you're slightly course right of them. Like I said, starboard tack, slightly course right, making sure you're actually covering that boat. This boat will bump if they need to. And making sure that if you are a deep 6 or you're in a 5, when you round this mark, sail to. Just sail straight down to this mark. Do not try and reach off into no man's land. Do not try and reach off into no man's land, right? Fastest point from here to here is going to be straight down. So you can get yourself back into a play by sailing straight down the marks, right? We always want to follow the play in team racing. If you're not following the play in team racing and you're in the back of the fleet, you're not going to end up back in the race. Got to follow the play. And then, like we said in the last one, you want to gap in the winning combo, and you want to try and bring the race back together and condense if you're in a losing combo. So if you're the blue boat and you end up in a losing combo, let's say they're in play 4, right? So you're in a 2, 3, 6, and they're in a 1, 4, 5. Not a stable combination. So this makes your job a little easier to condense the race. This guy is going to have to wait quite a while for you guys to get to him. If you are this boat, let me just mention, don't get away as the 1. I see far too often the 1 on an inexperienced team racing group decides, I'm just going to run with the 1. If I get the 1, we're going to win the race. Not how team racing works. You can win with a 2, 3, 4, a 2, 3, 5. There's combinations you can win with if they get the 1. So don't get too far away from the play if you're the 1. You want to be slowing down early enough to help your teammates in this scenario, right? All they need to do, if you're the blue team, you're hoping that boat 1 is down speed and slow here. Because if you've done what I said earlier and you kind of created this wall and you're coming back, let's get rid of these boats. Let's go back to full screen for you guys. 5 minutes before I'm supposed to end this. But if you're stalled out here because you've been sitting in the zone for 5 minutes because you were so launched and you decided to stay away from your team, these guys are coming back to the mark with speed. You're not going to be able to accelerate fast enough if you're down speed to get to boat 5, right? They know that you're there. They're going to do the around the outside, get around the mark. This guy's never going to be able to touch you. They may be able to round inside of you, but if they are down speed, you're probably going to come out of this rounding ahead of them. And if you're not, they've now established this overlap through a maneuver. So who has luffing rights? Ding, ding, ding. You do. As soon as you get past that mark, stuff them. You stuff them, you force them high, you bear away, and now you're leading into mark 4 with this guy who was in the 1 behind you. And now instead of maybe being in a 2, 3, 6, you are now in a 1, 3, 5, right? Because these guys are also going to be doing some team racing over here, and you are winning 2 pairs. So those are some big time moves that you can make on your downwinds. It's about being disciplined, and it's about having good communication and good boat handling. If you don't have those things, it's going to be a struggle on team racing. So if you're a sailor on this call, listen to your coach when they tell you to do tacking on the whistle. If you want to be good at team racing, take your boat handling seriously, because boat handling is the #1 reason why a lot of teams win. You can out boat handle a team on the team race course, it's huge. So that is it for my my team race downwind talk. But I am also willing to stay around for a little bit and answer any questions that you guys may have. The next team race talk is Tuesday, next Tuesday, so a week from now. That's going to be last beat. We'll talk about unbalancing, and we'll talk about kind of how that last upwind beat generally goes. Maybe get some rules in there about the slam dunk. And then on Wednesday, we have trivia night, which is going to be really fun. If you don't have a team, make a team. Teams up to 6, I believe, for the trivia night. And you can have a team name, and we have prizes. So very excited. It's one of our favorite S.M.A.R.T series events of the year. So you guys should definitely go. All right. Unless you're doing something, obviously, if you're doing something, you know, at least have fun with it. But we got a lot of good stuff coming next week. And yeah, that's kind of all I got for you guys. So if you have any chats, I'll hang out for another few minutes on live. And if you guys have any questions or scenarios you want to go over, I'm happy to chat about them.
Sorry.
You're good. Do you have questions or scenarios that you guys would like to go over? No? You don't got anything? Nothing that happened last year that you want to go over?
I can remember.
Okay. Anyone that's in the chat have any questions for me? If not, I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of your evenings. All right, easy enough for me. Well, thank you guys again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.